Yo, what's shaking, everybody? Welcome to the Orangebloods postgame show brought to you by the Lowy Law Firm. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That's Travis Gailey. Anwar Richardson will join us. Will join me. Who knows? It's late. He's doing the postgame press conference, and he will eventually join us for some commentary and some reporting from DKR after the Longhorns go on a 34-3 run and end up closing out a 41-20 win over UTSA. It was a slow start, but at the end of the day, they get the job done and then some. They cover. They do a lot of good things. And again, if you need a personal injury lawyer, call Adam Lowy. He is the sponsor of today's show, as he is and has been for years now. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, do all those things we ask you to do on a pretty routine basis. Travis, I'll just come to you first. With regards to this performance, where's your head?
After taking a deep breath following that first half, my head is this team ended up playing like this game ended up being what we thought it was going to be. You know, they took some shots early, but all in all, you know, my head's they finished the night in a good spot. So, you know, I think you chalk it up and move on.
Yeah, I mean, look, UTSA comes to town. First of all, you have to acknowledge they've got a really good quarterback in Frank Harris. He's a good player. He's a guy that could start for most of the teams in the Big 12. If that guy played for Kansas State, Kansas State would be a team that you could worry about.
Right.
I thought were well coached tonight. You know, like they get the onside kick. They were aggressive in the first half. They're an outmanned football team that eventually got outmanned. But they were certainly capable in the first half. And look, you give the Longhorns a lot of credit. On the offensive side of the ball, they end up doing what they wanted to do. They ran the ball with Bijan Robinson, and they got Roschon Johnson involved in multiple capacities. Hudson Card doesn't turn the ball over, plays well enough. I mean, look, they win by 21 points. So he plays well enough. He doesn't even have to do a lot in the second half. On the defensive side of the ball, they start slow, and yet they end up suffocating an offense that's got a good quarterback in Frank Harris. And then you look on the special team side of things, and there weren't really any miscues tonight. There didn't turn the ball over. There weren't any bad snaps. There weren't any missed field goals. The punting game was just fine. I thought Xavier Worthy, you know, there's a moment where the ball's kicked inside the 5-yard line, and I know he wanted to get his hands on that ball, but he lets it go into the end zone. You know, like, Travis, there's just a lot more good than bad in this game. There are some things to nitpick, but in the end, this was a game that the Longhorns were favored to win by double digits. They did that and then some, and more than anything, for me, they finished the game, right? So in every way that you can look at that, after falling behind 17-7, they took control of the game and never gave it back. And that's the sign of, I think, a maturing football team.
Yeah, no, I think that's the key here. Like I said earlier, they took UTSA's best shot, and they still just kept fighting back and plugging back. And like you said, at the end of the day, Texas just outmatched UTSA and wore them down. And you know, this is what you want out of a team, that when they don't bring their best, they still end up winning by 21 points. You know, I thought tonight from that aspect was a really good night. And yes, there are plenty of more than nitpick. There are plenty of things that you can actually go through and say, they didn't live up to their standard tonight. But I think that's healthy when you can win by 21 points by not living up to their standard. And I think it kind of puts this team, it puts the Bama game behind them. You know what I mean? There's no more, we hung with them. None of that. It is, hey, we've got to bring it every single week. And this game showed, the first half especially showed them exactly why they have to bring it every single week. And you mentioned Frank Harris, by the way. I look, Hudson Card is gritty as all get out, but would you rather have Hudson Card or would you rather have Frank Harris?
Frank Harris is a better football player right now than Hudson Card. And
yeah.
honestly, if you flip the quarterbacks, it's probably a 63-10 type of game. I mean,
Yep.
I ended up watching Frank Harris and just thinking to myself, if he were full stop, I'm not saying he's better than Quinn Ewers. I'm just saying if he were the quarterback for Texas, Texas probably wins the Big 12. That's how good I think he is as a quarterback. A lot of frustrated Texas defensive linemen tonight who would get their hands on Frank Harris and thought they would have had sacks. And look, maybe the most disappointing component of the game is that DeMarvion Overshown finally gets to the Frank Harris and sacks him, actually knocks Frank Harris out of the game for the rest of the game.
Yeah.
And it ends up not counting. And it was one of the bigger plays in the game in retrospect because unless the Big 12 overturns that call, and they could, it was a very –
They should.
He didn't dip his head. It wasn't the crown of the helmet. It was helmet to helmet.
Yeah, but that's only because Harris was kind of going down at the same time that he made contact. That's not targeting.
It was a tough call. And you hope that DeMarvion ends up getting a bit of a helping hand from Big 12 offices this week. Because I do think missing him next week for the first half in Lubbock, a game that I think Texas should win and probably will win. But DeMarvion Overshown actually was playing really well tonight. That little sequence before his ejection was one of the best two back-to-back plays we've seen from a Texas defender in a while, where he gets the pass breakup on one end. And I was just starting to think to myself, God, I guess DeMarvion as a pass rusher has kind of lost a little bit of his steam, because most of his best plays tonight were in pass coverage. He had a big pass breakup near the 2-yard line that kept UTSA from getting into the end zone. Potentially, the ball probably gets – if that guy catches the ball, it probably goes down around the 2-yard line, but it sets them up really nicely. Comes back on the next play with the sack, and it was kind of a game-changing play. The game was over, but it knocks Harris out. It takes Overshown out of the game. And really, if we're counting disappointments – I don't think there were any significant injuries tonight, right? So that is a positive, but potentially not having Overshown for the first half next week in Lubbock is a bit of a blow, because he's a pretty critical player on that defense. And he was one of the guys I thought that got them going tonight.
Yeah, for sure.
When they started a little bit slow. I mean, my God, it'll get lost now, but those first two UTSA drives – where they go 29 plays for over 12 minutes. And just, Anwar had said in the Slack channel, it looks like they can do this all night long. And in the end, it didn't get any better for UTSA. In retrospect, it was kind of a jinx, because they didn't end up doing that all night long. But credit to the Texas defensive staff and the players for making the adjustments that were needed. They stopped getting nickeled and dimed to death. Played really good base defense, didn't give up monster plays, and that's how you keep from getting upset at home, right? You don't turn the ball over, you don't have special teams miscues, you don't give up big plays on defense. Hey, that is the recipe for beating outmatched teams, and for too long, that's been kind of Texas's problem, is that they have not, over the course of the last 12 years, been able to do those three things in enough home games. So tonight, I thought tonight we'd be doing a post-game show and there would be some ranting and raving, and just because of the way the game started. And I mostly find myself pleased that there's not a lot of negative stuff tonight, really.
No, the defense, their biggest issue starting off was they just were missing tackles, and they haven't been doing that all season. They've been very sure tackling teams so far. That first 3 drives, they were missing them, and that's what allowed a 20-play drive on that opening drive for UTSA. But they corrected that. They even started that at the end of the second half. They started to make some tackles. And by the way, this was vanilla base defense. They were rushing with 4 people all night. I think I only saw 3 or 4 actual blitzes out of the defense, but for the most part, it was the 4 down linemen rushing the quarterback, trying to keep the receivers in front of them, trying to keep Harris in front of them. And they did a pretty good job outside of those first couple drives. And I thought they did a really good job tonight. By the way, Acho mentioned at the end of the game, and I haven't fact-checked this, but he said this is the first time since 2011 that Texas has held its opponents to 20 points or less during the first 3 games of the season.
I believe it.
That's good. Yeah, no, I do too, right? Because we know it wasn't the case the last couple of years. Look, if you hold your guy, and that includes Alabama, who just rolled up, almost 60-something tonight on ULM.
Yeah, they did the La Monroe what we thought they would.
Right. But, that's bringing it. And you've got to give the defense credit for that. The reason Texas is in the top 25 right now, the reason they're 2-1 and really should have been 3-0 is the play of the defense. And specifically, the defensive line brought it tonight. They've been bringing it all year. Now, they didn't get the sacks because UTSA's game plan was obvious. I mean, they're playing with a banged-up offensive line. Their whole game plan was get that ball out quickly, get it to the receivers, and see if they can make plays. And they did make some plays. Unfortunately for them, that is not a sustainable model to win football games. You need a running game to be able to beat somebody like Texas, and they just didn't have it. And Texas did. Bijan Robinson had the kind of night that we expect Bijan Robinson to have. This was his first breakout game of the season, and he was good. Look, this is a good game. You're right. This is a good game.
Travis, ironically, Roschon was the best player on the field in the first half, unless you wanted to say Frank Harris, right? So, but on the Texas side of things, Roschon.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but here's the thing. Texas struggled in the first half. They continually tried to run up the middle, and Majors, Hudson, and the left guard, whom it's
Hayden
late.
Connor.
Thank you. Majors, Hudson, and Hayden Connor, they struggled to control the defensive line early in the game. They could not get their running game going up the middle. The only bits that they got were to the outside, and that included Roschon. As the game wore on, though, and the physicality of the game wore down UTSA, who, by the way, is coming off a couple of overtimes through their first 2 games, and I think that caught up to them.
And missing a hell of a lot of offensive linemen.
Exactly. So I thought they looked good early, but Texas just outwhipped them. And the running game, once they got on track, once the offensive line got going, Roschon, Bijan, it didn't matter. You're right. Roschon looked better early because he was getting to the outside and Bijan wasn't. But then Bijan did what he does. And it
made it look easy.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I love me some Roschon, and that dude's going to be cashing checks in the NFL. But the difference between him and Bijan is Roschon's not breaking off 83-yard touchdown runs like Bijan is,
And I got to say, look, it's interesting. I thought a perfect example of the focus that the team had tonight under circumstances that were probably less than ideal for everybody, right? Like Xavier Worthy is probably a frustrated dude in that I don't even know I don't think he caught a pass. I don't think anybody really caught a pass in the second half. I mean,
maybe not. He finished with 4 catches for like 40-something yards. He had
Card had 140 yards passing at halftime.
Yeah.
He finishes with 161. I think Whittington caught a ball for about 20. I think Whittington had most of the receiving yards, if I'm not mistaken, and it all came on that one play. Worthy finished with 4 for 41. So maybe he had a catch. He must have had a catch somewhere in the second half, and it didn't go for very long. I can kind of recall it now.
Yeah, it was, I think, like a short pass out to the right-hand side. He was, dropped one of those, that first bomb deep early in the game. He dropped it. Then he had two other bombs shortly thereafter that were just misthrown. He has been bottled up this season, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he has not shown up yet the way we know he can show up, and not all of that is his fault. But he's had a few drops, and so yeah, he's got.
It's crazy to me that he has not scored
right
in the first 3 games of this season.
Right.
As a matter of fact, you and I were so sure that, look, there's no way Xavier Worthy's going to go. I didn't know if he was going to have like a 100-yard game, but I was convinced Texas will find a way somehow to get its best receiver the ball in the end zone. And look, early in the game, he has a couple of opportunities where that could have happened. I was going to say, though, as frustrated as he is on that on one of those Bijan runs, he's running down the field and shielding off a defender. And I think Bijan probably scores anyway, but I thought it said a lot about Xavier Worthy that in that moment, his head was in the team and blocking. And you look at Jatavion Sanders, and he has 1 catch for 5 yards in the game. But on both of those Bijan touchdown runs, if you go back and look at the block that Jatavion Sanders makes on both of those runs, he's pancaking guys in the run game. And that's a guy that wants to catch the football. He wants to score touchdowns. And yet he was a difference maker with seal blocks tonight in ways we don't think of him as that kind of a player. But I thought on nights where, look, Xavier and Jatavion were probably frustrated that the passing game was so pedestrian. I mean, the offense played inside of a phone booth. And, you can't survive like that every week, but you can survive like that tonight and win convincingly. And I think it says a lot about the togetherness of the team right now, that there's not any pouting, that those guys played hard in areas that don't get them NIL checks. And, I think Steve Sarkisian will go back and watch film tomorrow, and he'll be very pleased with the effort of players away from the football who did the little things that there won't be any headlines for those little blocks that they made.
Right.
But when they watch film, the entire team will see the effort that those guys gave. And I thought it was emblematic of kind of the entire team performance tonight. Everybody did something to contribute to the game and the win. And if they can keep that up over the course of the next 9 weeks, they're going to win a lot of football games.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you nailed it with the pointing out the small things that they did. That's critical. And I think you nailed that point. And look, it's a 12-game season. You're not going to play every week like your hair's on fire and everything clicks and everything's smooth, especially when your QB1 is injured and, your QB2 is dealing with an ankle injury, although he ran pretty well tonight, especially late in that game. He had the 30, 40-yard run Hudson Card did. He looked really good on that. But you're not going to have winning game. I mean, you're not going to look great every week. It's huge that this Texas team that we've watched for the last 12 years struggle on nights like this and end up losing games like this. It's huge that they not only won, they won very convincingly. I mean, at the end of the day, this really wasn't close. Ever since UTSA scored following that onside kick, that was pretty much the end of them. They got another field goal, and that's it. They didn't do anything else the rest of the game.
And Texas, it did not feel at 17-7.
No.
Like that was going to be the case.
Right. Because they were moving the ball with impunity up to that point, and they had all the momentum. There was nothing that made you – at that point, we're thinking it's a dogfight all the way to the end, and Texas may be lucky to win this game. The text I was getting from my friends was there were more than a few F-bombs dropped in those things. But,
no, and the haters out there were starting to get a little giddy. It's been kind of a bad day of college football today.
yeah.
So you could just sense it was like, oh boy, we were waiting for one of these games with ranked teams to get kind of interesting. And then in the end, it ends up not being Texas. And I think one of the real things that they'll be able to hang their hat on is I think I would not be surprised if Quinn Ewers is starting next week. I got a text message, and I bring this up because if this was a one-game deal for Hudson Card before Quinn Ewers is able to come back, I think, through a narrow prism, you can just say, job well done, Hudson. Backup quarterback comes in. You make sure that you don't do anything to screw it up.
Yeah.
You win the game.
The house down.
Yeah, you win the game. You hand the car keys back over to the – now, that may not be what Hudson would have preferred to have happened, but when we generally think of teams playing with a backup quarterback, you handle your business. I was told yesterday by somebody that I trust as a source. I mean, this particular source has been absolute money lately. All week long, he'd been telling me Hudson Card's going to start, no doubt about it. The ankle isn't as bad as everybody's saying it is. And I think if you watch the game, it played out like that. Same source has been saying if Hudson couldn't have gone, he believed that Quinn could have gone tonight if they had absolutely needed him. And he's already, this particular source is telling me next week Quinn will be back. I didn't know what to think of that when I first read it yesterday. I didn't dismiss it completely. I just thought, they might be able to get by not having to play him in Lubbock. But then you see him out on the field. He dresses tonight. You see him out in pregame warmups, and look, he wasn't whipping the ball around like Quinn Ewers can, but he was certainly on the field and dressed.
Yeah.
And if Quinn comes back that quickly and is okay, then the offense gets nuclear again. And Xavier Worthy is going to have big halves and big quarters and big games. And Jatavion Sanders suddenly gets to be a big piece of the receiving game in a way that he hasn't since Ewers went out of the lineup. And it would be just an amazing blessing for this Texas team if they're able to get Quinn Ewers back early. Because if they can't, tonight is a snapshot of them living week to week of the schedule's it's as easy as it's going to get right about now. Yeah. As far as road games go, Texas Tech's not that good. West Virginia's not that good. Tell you what, I'm glad. I think Texas fans should be glad that they're not playing Kansas in the first 6 games of this season. Because as good as Frank Harris is, Jalen Daniels is Frank Harris on steroids.
Yeah.
So there are tougher games down the stretch. But tonight, I do think was an indication of as long as Hudson is the starter, this is how they're going to allow him to operate. And if you don't get –
it's not even allow catch.
Those big plays from Bijan change the game.
Yeah,
right?
But you're saying allow him to operate. They're not allowing him to operate. I don't think they have a choice with Hudson, honestly. He does not have that deep ball skill. So
but tonight, he can throw the intermediate balls, and that wasn't a part of the offense tonight. They were not running skinny posts. They were not throwing the ball across the middle of the field. I mean, I think those are areas where Hudson Card can actually make some good throws. I think both he and Quinn Ewers struggle with the deep ball right now. I mean, Quinn doesn't get to finish the Alabama game, but we forget that against Louisiana Monroe, it was a talking point coming out of that game.
Absolutely. But
they
it
still
looked like he corrected it, right?
What's that?
It looked like he corrected it through the first quarter of the Bama game. You're like, okay.
I think we were on the verge of saying such a thing. As it is, it feels like his deep passing game's in purgatory, right? It's not in heaven, It's not in hell. It was in hell week 1.
Right.
It feels like it's just not quite there. We'll see when he gets back, right? I mean, these are the things that I think the Longhorns are now 25% of the way through the season.
Yeah.
But they're still working the kinks out in some areas. And weirdly on the offensive side of the ball. And I don't know that that's the case. I think Quinn Ewers is healthy. Forget about last week, right? I don't know how the final 3 quarters of that game look. I think we all think Texas wins, and maybe by 2 scores if Quinn plays. But it's also feasible that he turns the ball over 2 times, and the whole thing plays out differently because you just never know.
Right.
What we think would have happened, it's the damn thing about a week ago, was that Quinn didn't get those final 3 quarters that his evolution needs. He needs game reps. He needs games against ranked teams. And he misses out on that. So when he does come back, you're talking about an offense that's still working out who it is. Yeah. The good news is, feels like the defense, we know who the defense is.
The defense is winning the ball games. That right? But by the way, you talk about Quinn needing game reps. If he can come back against Tech, which is a team that Texas should beat, really no matter who's calling plays back there.
Against their backup quarterback.
Tech had, 4 interceptions tonight against NC State. I mean, this was not a game that their vaunted passing game does not look all that good tonight. And NC State's defense, I don't think is as good as Texas's defense. So this is the perfect type of game for Quinn to come back, get some reps, get back into the rhythm and flow of things before going up against OU. Who
I will say, though, that Tech was probably more competitive against NC State on the road tonight than I would have expected. Now, maybe that a lot of that is just more than I'm not. Believe me, I'm not singing Texas Tech's praises. I'm just saying when that game started tonight, I thought, well, Tech might get beat by 4 touchdowns, and it just stayed kind of close for 4 quarters. It was never a blowout. It was never like a 1-score game either. It just always kind of felt like NC State had arm's length away from Texas Tech. But, it looks I didn't watch the game, but it looks like they battled.
So they ended up with 4 sacks and 4 takeaways on defense of Tech. But NC State struggled a little bit this season. They beat East Carolina by 1 point. Then they played Charleston Southern, which is a throwaway game.
Fair enough.
And then so they struggled a little bit, but all in all, I think they're a better team. I don't think I was expecting them to destroy Tech, because Tech has played pretty well so far this season against limited competition like Houston, but
I'm just going to remind everybody, it is the Orangebloods postgame show here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. We've got like 67 likes, but there's like 10 times that many people watching the show live right now. Everybody stop what they're doing. Hit the like button. Texas won by 3. Texas covered tonight. I have to believe there's some happy gamblers out there that listen to all of the Orangeblood staff members pick Texas to cover. Hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done that. Anwar Richardson will join us. I don't know. I'm trying to think. I haven't even paid attention. I've been keeping my eye on this A&M game, and I'm also been watching the USC game. So I haven't been doing the best job possible of looking to see if the press conference has started. But as soon as the Steve Sarkisian postgame press conference is over, Anwar will join us. Travis will go to bed, and the show will continue. And again, the show brought to you. Sark, so you got like 15 more minutes, it sounds like. Again, this show brought to you by the Lowy Law Firm. If somebody does something to hurt you, call Adam Lowy. He will get their money. Let's just go player for player. Let's do like a player draft guys, that if we're giving out game balls tonight, you and I, on hold on, we got super chat questions. All right, hold on, because I got my glasses on, but it is what it is. So Eric says, hey guys, I'm in Vegas. Hit big on the horn. See, like I said,
$99 super chat. He can afford it now.
That's right. He's paying for his super chat with winnings in Vegas today. It was ugly, and I was sweating it out, but never lost faith. Enjoy your super chat donation. Need to clean some things up on both sides of the ball. Thanks for the pick on Thursday. Hey, Eric, that's what we're here for. That was a $99.99 super chat. Eric must have hit it big, because you know what you don't want to do? It's like winning a hand in Vegas. So you win a big hand and you tip the dealer, but you don't tip the dealer like half your winnings. You want to do above the standard percentage of the tip, but you don't want to over tip.
Right.
So whatever Eric did in Vegas, it had to have gone very well, because he skipped the $20 super chat and went straight to the $100 super chat, which allows you to skip to the front of the line, by the way.
Good for you, Eric.
Yeah, absolutely. Good for you. Be safe. Have fun the rest of the time that you're there. Hey, do we have any more super chat questions? We can knock those out of the way while we're doing this. Let's see. Why are we not playing
about
Ajay Hall? If I've done what he has been asked of him, why not give it? He played tonight.
He did.
Here's the thing, guys. Sark does not rotate his wide receivers.
Good. I mean, we complained about that. Herman did. Remember how much we complained about?
Too much.
Oh, way too much. So I'm kind of good with this.
So Sark is the anti-Herman. And it's not like an Ajay Hall isolated issue. I mean, Tyreek Milton's not getting on the field, and he didn't have the same issue. So the good news is Ajay Hall did play tonight. So, he got that part is done. He's now played, and presumably we'll see maybe his contributions throughout the season grow from there. But if your name is not Xavier Worthy, Jordan Whittington, or Casey Kane, you just didn't play very much at the wide receiver position, and you haven't through the first 3 games of this season. And that's about all I would say to that. Let's see. Agnes says, have we discussed a phantom targeting call yet? Does the Big 12 overturn that, or do they not care? Okay, now there's a lot to unpack there. Yes, we did. B, we can revisit it, though. Tough call.
I have a little more on that, thanks to Anwar. Anwar tweeted out that Sark mentioned that the refs told him DeMarvion hit a defenseless player, which is why they called it. So it wasn't that he
got ejected for the game.
Right. But
they
called it. I'm just saying, Sark said in the presser after the game, according to Anwar's tweet, that it was because the refs told him it was because Demo hit a defenseless player.
I mean, he sacked him.
I think they were saying that. Yeah.
Technically, if that's going to get called, every sack is technically a hit on a defenseless player, right?
I could go to another tweet from Alex where he said, if that's targeting, then why don't we just effing play flag football?
The funny thing about that play is they hadn't been able to get Frank Harris on the ground all night long. That's the play that they do. And it felt like Xavier got there before he was expecting contact. He got there so fast that it just was a bang bang play, and I don't think. Yeah, I can't say what was going through.
To me, it looked like Harris was trying to duck.
Yeah,
that doesn't make him defenseless. He's not defenseless. He's playing football at that moment. He looked like he was starting to try and duck under the sack, and it ended up being helmet to helmet, but face mask to helmet, not the crown. That's not targeting. It just
The
is.
second part of the question, Travis, is does the Big 12 overturn that, or do they just not care? I mean elbow shoulder shrug right here, because it may be that they don't care. I have a feeling they might overturn that, but
I have a feeling they're going to defend their referees.
It's like Premier League officiating.
Yeah.
The VAR guy is there to protect the guy who's on the field.
Yeah.
And it better be egregious if you're going to make the guy on the field look bad. You may be right. It's hard to say. Also in the super chat, best case scenario for Ewers' return Saturday against Texas Tech. It's not. Again, I mentioned this earlier in the show, and I've mentioned this on Orangebloods too. Had a source yesterday tell me that Ewers, and this isn't me reporting that Quinn Ewers is going to play on Saturday. Typically, we like to multi-source all of these types of things. The quarterback thing's been a little screwy to begin with. Like, I'll be honest, Anwar and I literally had a conversation 4 hours ago, where we were like, we don't think any of these bitches can be trusted. Like, every single source that we talk to, from every angle has a different thing to say. This all started where I was like, Anwar, like, whole 4 to 6 weeks thing. I was like, do you think that guy that informs us that, and Pete Thamel, literally it seemed like at the same time, do you think that I was like, what do you think that was? Because I'm hearing, and I told him, I said, talk to one of my sources yesterday, and that guy says that Card plays Saturday and that Ewers plays against Texas Tech. And I told him, I think this might be the most trustworthy source that we have on the matter, but who knows? So the best case scenario is next week. Seriously. I think at worst at this point, he comes back for West Virginia. He will be back, in my opinion, absolutely before Oklahoma. He will play at least one game before the Oklahoma game based on the intel that I have right now. Oh, dog stretching in the background. Shout out to the puppies of the world out there. Just another $5 to say I knew the Big 12 officials would totally screw the new rule calling quarterbacks in passing motion a defenseless player. Hey, it's Big 12 officiating.
Water is wet.
We're 7 days removed from that mess last week. Actually, do we know that was a Big 12 crew tonight?
I don't know that for sure. No, I can't.
I don't know either. Like, very well, that could have been a Conference USA crew.
Yeah.
I think because it's a bad call, we're assuming that it was a Big 12. Typically, I was surprised that the Big 12 crew called the Alabama game.
I was too.
The visiting conference
is
the set of officials that handle that game. And so I don't know for sure. I'll have to check. I don't recognize all Big 12 officials off the cuff. I used to. They were all the same guys for a long time, and now they're all just guys. And I want to say maybe in the TV broadcast they mentioned that it was a Big 12 crew, but I can't definitively say that for certain. All right, I think we've gone through the super chat. Let's go while we wait for Anwar to join us following Steve Sarkisian's post-game press conference.
Sark just wrapped, by the way.
So 10 minutes away, Anwar will be joining us, and we'll certainly be going up to midnight tonight. My guess is we'll go till about 12:15 or so, maybe 12:30. Kind of depends on how much juice Anwar still has on the batteries at midnight after a long work day. Game balls. If we're giving out game balls, let's just go one at a time of the guys that jump out in our mind. And we'll get back to the super chat in a second. I see that we've got a $10 question, so we'll certainly go to that. But game balls, Travis.
I mean, I'll take the low hanging fruit because the super obvious one is Bijan, right? I mean, he was far and away the best player on the field tonight. So, like I said earlier, he's just got that extra gear that the other guys, as good as the Texas running backs are, and I wouldn't trade Texas's running back room for any other running back room in the country. As good as they are, Bijan's just that extra level, and he showed it tonight. I thought being Texas's best player, he turned up early in the second half and turned the game on its head and put Texas on the path to doing what it eventually did, which is just pulling away, So that's my number one
defense. Since defense won the game tonight,
all right.
Jalen Ford was credited with 15 tackles,
right?
10 solo, and he is the only guy on that. They did well. Johnny Barron gets the interception, which, by the way, if teams haven't figured this out now, if you overthrow a receiver against Texas, they may take that to the house. Warning to all future quarterbacks on the schedule. If you miss that wide open receiver running that little drag route or that little skinny post and it goes over his head, somebody from Texas may take that back to the house. We've seen it now in 2 out of 3 games. But Jalen Ford forces a fumble. And early in the game, he combined with, I can't even remember who the hell it was, but they combined for a tackle for loss. That was one of the few plays made in the backfield.
Yeah.
In the first half, Texas had 2 tackles for loss. Ford was a part of that. I didn't think he was great. I thought that he compiled stats against an offense that was allowing for line, but you know what I mean? Like when there are 29 plays run on the first couple of drives of the game and they're all going for 3 or 4 yards a pop, your linebackers are probably going to be making tackles in volume. But man, at the end of the night, when the defense has actually turned in a really good performance, and you've made 15 tackles, 10 of which have been credited as solo, and you forced a fumble, even if it wasn't recovered, you did cause a fumble. You did force Frank Harris to drop the ball. I'll give you an attaboy, especially because, look, I was one of the ones that was really critical of Jalen Ford in the opener. He was awful against Louisiana Monroe. I mean,
he was non-existent.
It was the opposite of tonight, where tonight he's like accumulating tackles in a way that some could even perceive as cheap, right? Like, I mean, somebody had to make the tackles. But in the opener, he wasn't even accidentally tackling people. So to play the way that he did a week ago against Alabama and to follow that up with a 15 tackle performance tonight to lead the defense on a night where, when it's all said and done, we think the defense ends up playing pretty well. I'll give a game ball to Mr. Ford. What about you? Who's your second guy?
You know what? I'm going to stick with the defense, and I'm going to stick with the linebacker core, and I'm going to give it to Mr. Targeting, DeMarvion Overshown. He was second on the stat list with tackles. He had 10, actually 11, but they took away the sack because of the targeting call. He also, though, he had that big hit on the tight end at the goal line that separated the ball, and that was a big, big play because if that dude holds on to the ball, UTSA is probably going to score a touchdown there. Instead, I think that's the 1 points they got in the second half. I think that ended up being a field goal because right after that, they had a penalty and they ended up getting dry. They lost yardage after that and hit the field goal. But that was that close to being a touchdown, and it was that close to putting UTSA right back in the game. And Demo came up with a big hit to separate the ball out of that tight end, who, by the way, that tight end, UTSA's tight end, and I'm forgetting the kid's name, Cardenas, I think it is. He had a good game, but Demo played better. So I'm going to give him a game ball, and hopefully that'll give him some solace while he's sitting out the first half of the Texas Tech game.
I have so many guys that I want to give game balls to.
But run down the list if you want.
Well, I'm going to give this guy a section. Okay. Didn't mention Kelvin Banks' name all night.
Right.
He's not committing penalties.
Yep.
He's not giving up plays. There wasn't even an accidental, Hayden Connor had a play he had the penalty in the first half. And then I want to say he might have even allowed like a little disruption at one point. And it was funny because I was like, well, I thought to myself, oh, it's like the first bad play that I can remember him having. And then I was like, oh my God, the freshman, Kelvin Banks, again, all he does is show up and play really well on his side of the field. And, when they struggled in the running game early on, it wasn't because Kelvin Banks couldn't block people. Right. That guy just keeps doing a good thing. And I have no doubt in my mind when Alex does his grading for this game that he'll have another 80-ish type score. And we really are, I think, watching the best I think we're watching the best offensive lineman season. It's only been 3 games. But if he does this over 12 games, I think it'll be better than any season that Connor Williams or Sam Cosmi, either of them had. And I say that with respect to both of those guys in the seasons at their best, how good they were. Kelvin Banks is on another level. And, I think he'll really start to get his shine. Let him play against Oklahoma the way that he has the first 3 games of this season. And I think if Texas wins a game like that, he comes out as a guy. Because Oklahoma looks really good on paper. Yeah. They look like a defense that's very formidable. Brent Venables has them playing good, solid, fundamental defense. And I can't wait to see Kelvin Banks put in a position to play against a defense where, just like with Alabama, everybody's going to respect the hell out of that team coming into the game. I can't wait to see Kelvin Banks perform because he hasn't had a misstep yet. I mean, really, what a start to his career.
Enjoy Kelvin Banks while you can because he's gone after 3 years and he's going very high in the first round.
I'm just still getting for 2 more though after this.
I know that's what I'm saying.
Enjoy him.
Enjoy him while you can.
Like 30+ games to still enjoy.
Yeah. So do it. Enjoy it because his time is ticking. He's already put up tape against Will Anderson, who's going to be. Dude, I mean, Will Anderson's going to be a star in the NFL.
Yeah, pick 6 today.
I know exactly, and Kelvin Banks looked good against him. Oh, you're right. I mean, do we expect anything less than a very strong Brent Venables defense? I mean, they're going to be good. Brent Venables is one of the best defensive coordinators of all time, right? I mean, over a sustained period of time. So we expect that, but I don't know that OU has anyone who can go up against Kelvin Banks and make him look silly.
No, I mean, he's in a very short amount of time, he's proven to be all that in a bag of chips.
Yeah.
All right,
by the way, I do have another game ball, but I thought this was really interesting tonight that when Cole Hudson went out injured, and he didn't stay out injured for, I think it was just one play, but it was Logan Parr that came in, not the other 5-star recruit, DJ Campbell, who supposedly, if there were a depth chart, supposedly would be second on the depth chart at right guard.
That's an indicator that Logan Parr, what your 6th man, truly is probably Carrick.
Right.
But they've got him playing so much tight end.
I was about to say he's number 3 tight end, isn't he?
He really is at this point. So Parr is probably your 7th guy.
Yeah.
But in a pinch, clearly he's the 6th guy. And first of all, kudos to Logan Parr.
Yeah.
Because I'll be honest, I have never in my entire life thought that Logan Parr would emerge as a real contributor to the Texas football program. I'm really that is as big of a Kyle Flood win as anything else that he has. It's one thing to get a guy like Kelvin Banks or even a guy like Cole Hudson and have them playing well as true freshmen. To take a guy in Logan Parr, who I have had on transfer watch for the last 12 months, for that guy to be in a position to come in and be the guy they trust.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, it was only a play, but when it first happened, I wondered about, okay, like, is it DJ Campbell time? And instead it was Logan Parr time. And I tipped my cap to Logan Parr, like, attaboy.
And, correct me if I'm wrong, wasn't in the first game, there was like a one play injury or with maybe it was Hayden Connor. And I think it was Logan Parr that came in that game too.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you're right. Kudos to Parr. He's clearly been putting in the work and has earned trust of this coaching staff. So,
didn't think it was possible.
Yeah. But the game ball I had was for I gave the first one to Bijan. The second one's got to be Roshan because that dude still averaged 7.4 yards per carry. I mean, 11 carries, 82 yards, and a touchdown. That's putting in work. And he added a couple of more yards receiving, and he was the Wildcat quarterback, So game ball for Roshan because that dude's a player. He is just a football player all the way around, and he's got skills. And he showed out tonight in a very good way.
Well, if you're going to give 2 game balls to running backs,
yeah,
I'll give 2 game balls to offensive lineman Christian Jones.
Right. Yes.
I don't know how well he truly played, but what I do know is I don't remember him having the kind of moment that I think most people identify with Christian Jones's play.
Right.
Right. He looks like an NFL football player trapped inside of not an NFL player. And tonight, look, I've been telling people for about the last 24 months, don't be surprised if Christian Jones plays in the NFL. Because he's a huge human being. And offensive linemen in the NFL are hard. Like, if you have a pulse, you can get a job in the NFL. If you're a really big dude, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't know that he's a starter in the NFL. I don't know if he gets his pension in the NFL. I'm just saying don't be surprised if he's definitely good enough to be on a practice squad.
That's what I was going to say. He feels like the kind of guy who's going to get into a camp and impress enough that he's going to end up on a practice squad because they know he's going to need some development. And by the way, if he were playing they kept him on the left side, and I've been as critical of Christian Jones as anybody because of his play last year, where he was on the left side and he was hung out to dry time and time again. But clearly playing on the right side of the line suits him. And it's, when you're talking about footwork and learning hands, that kind of thing matters. It's not as easy to switch from one side to the other as a lot of people think. This is where he belongs, and he's looked good this year. He's played well this year. So, yeah, good on you for giving him on the game ball. Good on him for really putting in the work as well, because I think he's on his way to, like you said, an NFL paycheck. I don't know what that could be, but with his body type and he is fairly nimble. He's very nimble. He's got upside. I think he gets drafted. Yeah.
Especially if he, when it's all said and done, it's hard to view him through the prism of anything other than what we mostly remember him for. But if you can fast forward to the end of the year, and look, we'll finish this up because Anwar is here. I'll just say this. You think about Christian Jones, if he can get through this season playing at the level that he is, we're talking about a guy that will have started over 30 games in his career at a high D1 level. He's got tape out now that I think is suitable. I think an NFL team will look at him and say, that guy looks like an NFL player. Anyway, let's bring in Anwar Richardson. Live from DKR. There he is, you handsome son of a gun with the hat on and everything else. Travis, we're going to bid you farewell. Thank you so much.
Well, okay, that's fine. But I want to hear, I'll tune in and listen, and I want to hear about what happened with the guy jumping into Bevo's pen. So don't.
Okay, yes. I'll give you some clarity on that too. By the way, a victim of some. So let me tell you what happened. So I go down on the field, and I'm approached by like security people, like Anwar. You're not going to believe this. I don't know who the hell these people are, but like Anwar, you're not going to believe this. Really nice people though. I'm just joking right now. And they're like, yo, man, did someone try to jump into Bevo's pen? I'm like, are you serious right now? And so I watch a video of it. They showed me a video on the phone, but Catch, I don't know if you would know this. It was on a Droid phone. And so I'm hearing what they're telling me, and then I'm watching it on a Droid phone, and it looked like it. But Droid phones are kind of grainy when you see some of the videos. So it must have been someone sent it from an iPhone to a Droid or vice versa. And then another person, so as I'm coming back to the press box, some guy starts yelling at me. He's like, you didn't get on Bevo. I'm like, what the hell just happened here now? So then he showed me his video, which was way more clearer. So props to the people who have an iPhone and are now Apple users. And screw droids. And so in any case, the guy was trying to get into the pit. And he literally was he was like halfway there into it until the officer grabbed him off of there. They didn't beat his ass, but they definitely grabbed his ass off of it. So the clerical definition is he didn't get on top, but he was trying to get there. Now I've heard the different things as to why he was trying to do it. I mean, I don't know the guy's name, so I mean, I guess I can feel free to say it. They were trying to say it may have been a suicide attempt, which would be the oddest suicide attempt if there ever was one.
He's
because
clearly not very bright.
Well, clearly, and I mean, some say it's suicide attempt, but as I look here, I mean, all you got to do is go up to like the 300 level, go on the top rank, and just end it. Like if that's really what you're about that life. Like literally, I'm looking right now, Catch. If he just goes up to the 300 level and goes and jumps into the cement, it's a wrap. You don't got to do this unless you bring the dog.
2080. That if you get in there, that Bevo does something to you that kills you.
Yes.
Now, what would have been worse for him is if the Silver Spurs got him with a cattle prod, because that's just going to hurt.
Well, see,
You're not going to die from that. You're just going to be in pain.
Well, those guys, they're watching the game, so no one's thinking at that point that's going to happen, right? Everyone's just watching the game. That's because it's never been done. But apparently he jumped the fence, ran over there, and then tried to get it. And so I mean, a good effort. This was definitely. It'll be interesting. Somebody will get an arrest report on him, and I imagine Texas Tribune, Statesman, something like that will have the full story on that. But that did happen, though. By the way,
on that cheery note,
yes.
Well, Travis, you now have your story. You can now can leave in peace, knowing that you got the full story.
Yeah, and that he didn't jump off the 300 section. This was better.
Yes.
So
we're glad, and thankfully that didn't happen. And hopefully the guy that wants Bevo to potentially maim him gets the help that he needs.
Have a good night.
Travis Gailey, thank you for that.
And hopefully he doesn't watch this video next week and realize the better way to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Anwar, Travis and I have just been talking football. We've been talking about this game.
I don't want that to happen.
We know nothing about the post-game press conference. So I'm just going to give you the floor and let me know what happened in the post-game press conference of significance, if there was anything, and your general impressions on the game.
Well, I'll start with the easiest thing, which is, obviously the quarterback situation. He did say that, for a little bit of time, he actually started talking a little bit more about Catch. who was playing and started talking about basically how Hudson during the week started becoming a little bit more active in practice as the week went along. He said he still wasn't quite sure what Quinn would be able to do, but Quinn did get better, and that's why Quinn threw a little bit over, on Saturday. Not a lot. When Quinn was throwing before the game, it would be, at one point it was Charles Wright throwing the majority of the passes, and then Quinn. And we're just talking about like before we got into the team portion, so we're basically talking about like warm-ups. And then Quinn would throw like a couple passes, and then of course when we got into the team portion, Quinn threw a little bit, but not a ton. So, there seemed to be a little bit of encouraging news for him as far as that is concerned. He did say that Charles Wright has made like some leaps and bounds, and felt like, if they needed to put him in, he would be fine. But ultimately, they just decided to go with Hudson. Kind of praised Hudson, because even though he was hurt, he kind of said that guy's a gamer, bleeds burnt orange. And it said the best play that Hudson made was actually with his legs on that really long run. And that speaks a lot to him as when you consider the amount of pain that he's in. So very, very high praise for, all his quarterbacks there. You said, the basics, which you already know, which, they were going to keep the game plan a little bit simple for him. It was based on what they were, and they just felt like they can run this team down and wear this team down as the time went along. He said basically in the second half, he told his running backs to just stop dancing, and he just said, just run over these guys. And that's kind of what you saw a little bit more catch in the second half, of them just being a little bit more deliberate, just going after those guys. And he said, outside of some of the the plays when UTSA was making, he said they were making plays on offense, but they weren't like major plays in his opinion. He goes they were just making all the little catches, all the little catches, the dink and dunk, like they were doing exceptionally well. But then he felt like in the second half, his defense really started to catch up with that, really started to eliminate that. And hell, catch at the end of the day, UTSA scored 17 points, and then they only scored 3 in the second half. So you got to give your hats off to the defense as far as kind of shutting that thing down, figuring it out. Trying to think what other things that he mentioned. He did talk a little bit at the end. It was a good question about Pete K actually being on the sidelines as opposed to the booth this year. And, he just said, and kind of what you would expect from an answer like that, Kretsch, which is being able to communicate, being able to substitute a little bit better, but being on the sideline. So that seems to be like a little bit of a change, and he said he could feel it this in this game when adjustments needed to be made. It was easier to do it from the sidelines. And, Catch, there's obviously a longer story for another night as far as, Tom Herman and what his, how comfortable he felt on sidelines. And so it's interesting when you take a guy out the booth, and that's what they're normally used to doing. Some people prefer booth, some people prefer sidelines, but Sarkisian was like, I like sidelines, I prefer it. And so basically, I guess if your boss says this is what we're going to do, then that's what you're going to end up doing. And the obvious praise for Bijan, the obvious praise for Roshan, and what they was able to do. Some praise obviously for Deshaun Jameson as well. That I would say those are kind of the highlights of it. As far as my thoughts on the game, well, first of all, my thought is I'm glad we're doing a post game where this team won. And so let's start there, because when it went into halftime, I started thinking to myself, oh, Lord, I don't want to do this tonight. Please, baby Jesus, don't make this into a rough night for Catch and I. So so my thoughts on the game was that.
The old midnight post gamer after a loss.
That we've done too many of those. Those are horrible. There's nothing fun about those games. So our sanity. I was really glad that you and I wouldn't have to be dealing with that kind of situation. From an offensive standpoint, I think it kind of played out the way that we thought. Catch, we thought that this, look, at the end of the day, you run Bijan, you run Roshan, you do some Wildcat, and then you go home. And it wasn't pretty, But I think at the end of the day, I think everything that you and I thought would probably happen in this game, it ended up happening. So you got that. You don't see the big offensive plays and explosions, things to the fact. I was, look, for a little bit, Jordan Whittington was pretty impressive to me, Catch. I know if we had to do some attaboys at the end, but Jordan is a guy that made the most out of his opportunities. And again, I think he finishes 4 for 56 for Jordan Whittington. Xavier has a quieter 4 for 41, but Jordan Whittington had some good plays there when it counted. And then defensively, Catch, I think they just kept chipping away, getting close, not getting close enough. The quarterback was pretty good. I mean, and pretty elusive. For UTSA for a little bit. Harris was, doing the damn thing. He was converting. But I think eventually they were able to get that pressure on him. Eventually they were able to find a way to contain him. And then eventually they caught up. And when they caught up, they were hitting him. When they were hitting him, they were tagging him to the point eventually where he had to come out of the game. But I thought the defense did what they needed to do. Of course, you get the pick six, and that always helps, right? Catch, to be able to pull that off. So overall, it's what I think it's a game that, 41-20, they cover the spread. And, then you go into conference play and starting next week. But, finishing, 2-1. But one of the things I'm writing about for tomorrow, Catch, which is almost today, so which almost is in a few hours, to be quite honest with you. But by the way, many people ask me, like, man, you got to go to San Antonio in a few hours.
You have your Pulitzer Prize winning pulpit coming out in a few hours.
Yeah, in a few hours. I might be filing that bad boy at 3:00, honest with you. So hopefully it's a judgment-free zone. But but yeah, damn, I forgot where I was going with my entire thought. But shit, I forgot. I had a good thought. No. I sidetracked myself by talking about something totally different. But it'll come back to me. Overall, good. It was a good performance. I think what I was trying to say is, this is what I was saying. I was saying what I'm writing for tomorrow is, Texas is to me, Catch, going into conference play 2-1, but it feels a little bit different than last year when they finished conference play at 2-1, because we kind of knew that after that Arkansas game, you said to yourself, like, oof, oh no, there's a lot of question marks about this team. And for me, what I'm writing for tomorrow is more so, Catch, about, look, all they've got to do, just keep this ship afloat until Quinn Ewers gets back. And then who knows what might be able to happen for this team going forward. Just find a way to win. Use your Bichons, use your Rochons. Just find a way to get it done. And then by the time he comes back, whenever that is, all of a sudden you tell yourself, Texas can pretty much win any game with this defense and with a good quarterback. You just got to get Quinn back, and then the basics. So get the wins, as ugly as it may not be pretty. Just get them. If you can do that few weeks, then we'll see what happens.
Yeah, one of the things it's clear whether it is the ankle or if it's just Hudson in general that they don't completely trust. I mean, it's hard to say because the two things are happening at the same time. So, we haven't seen enough of Hudson without the ankle injury to know just how much they'd be willing to let him turn it loose if he's 100%. But the offense, this is an offense that has nuclear ability, right? And they're not nuclear right now. But one of the things that I'll write about this weekend in my column, I will have a section that's dedicated to, it was hard not to notice the effort that Xavier Worthy made on the first Bijan Robinson touchdown run, where I don't know that guy was going to catch him, but Xavier Worthy made an effort to at least shield a guy as a blocker that a lot of pouting wide receivers who haven't caught a touchdown yet in the third game of the season that have All-American aspirations. I thought Xavier Worthy doing team stuff when I think a lot of guys wouldn't. I think says a lot about him and a lot about what they've got going right now in the program. Same token, Jatavion Sanders was a guy that was a highlight reel in the opener. Since Hudson Card's come in, they have not really been able to get him going in the passing game. But I thought on both of the touchdowns that Bijan had in the second half, if you go back and look, Jatavion Sanders had pen blocks where he just absolutely mauls a guy. And on one of them, when he comes off the field, Sarkisian really gave him an attaboy, nearly jumped in his arms to say, great job. But again, that's not what we know Jatavion Sanders for, his blocking. That in the second half, Sanders and Worthy aren't getting the ball, but we're still heavily invested in the game and doing everything that they could to beat team players. I think says a lot about this team as a whole. And I think when Ewers comes back, I'm really fascinated to see how long it takes for this thing to go nuclear, because it's still an offense that at its best is able to get the ball in theory to its playmakers more so than it was tonight. They still scored 41 points. They still covered. They still did a lot of things that they can hang their hat on and feel good about. And yet it wasn't a complete performance. It wasn't a showy performance, but it was a good, solid win and closing things down with a 34-3 run after falling behind 17-7. I think everybody on the team can feel good about their contributions tonight. Yeah,
Catch. Look, everyone wants to eat, right? And so I'm to your point, especially from an offensive standpoint, and look, that's the thing we always talked about before the season is how do you feel all the miles that are out there? Well, right now I feel like Texas is in survival mode without Quinn Ewers, and at that point you just can't worry about who's eating steak over here, who's eating filet mignon, who's got the lobster over here. You just got to eat. You just gotta be able to say, I'm hungry and I need some food and I'm good to go. And that's the main thing. And so for Texas to be able to do what they were able to do, which is said to run the ball successfully, wear down this team, and be able to, and look, and that may need to be the formula next week, Catch, against Texas Tech, which, for the most part, ain't really a great team. But they're better than UTSA. They have better athletes than UTSA, so they'll be a little bit better. But there's also a team that Texas last year dropped 70 points on as well. So I can't ignore that they had success against this team last year, beat them down pretty handedly. And this is a team that just lost to North Carolina State, which is it's a ranked team, but really didn't put up much of a fight against NC State on Saturday. So. If you can get past, you get past UTSA, you get past, obviously, if you get past next week, and then you get past the West Virginia team. First of all, when you talk about the scheduling kind of helping you out, especially for a guy like Quinn who's out, you couldn't really ask for much more because Kansas is undefeated. So maybe you need to have them a little bit later, but you can at least can say, okay, at this point, you've got UTSA, you've got some teams that you would say are on the bottom of your schedule before you really start getting into the tougher portion of it. And so, I thought it was a good game plan. The smart game plan is really well executed. And the thing that Sarkisian talked about that he's really proud of is that he was proud of how his guys responded and through the adversity. That was one thing he was really excited about. He felt like through adversity, they still pressed through, and through adversity, they didn't fold. It's some of the things that we saw last year, right? Which is when this team got punched in the mouth or punched in the chest, we didn't really see them come back. Like when they got punched in the mouth or punched in the chest, usually that was kind of the end of it. And then it was the chaos that ensued. So, there are some signs that this thing could be a little bit better. But the you'll know where you're at a good place is when number 3 is not just going through some little drills or throwing off the opponent just by being in uniform, but actually being out there, getting practice reps during the week, and then of course being able to suit up on Saturday.
It's funny. We've been going now for a while, so I'm trying to recycle some of the
That's
conversation
okay.
points that Travis and I had. And by the way, if you're just joining us, it is the Orangebloods postgame show here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. I'm Jeff Ketchum. That is Anwar Richardson. This is brought to you by the Lowy Law Firm. If somebody does something to hurt you and you need to sue
Hey,
somebody,
John. It's John Bianco.
call Adam Lowy. He will win you some money if you need to sue somebody because somebody's hurt you. Lowy Law Firm, proud sponsor of the Orangebloods postgame show. Also, I'm looking. There's like almost 1,000 people watching the show right now, but we've got like 180 likes. All near 1,000 of you. I'm not asking for manual labor. I'm just saying click the thumb that points up. Give us a like. Subscribe to the channel. Hey, the Longhorns covered tonight. A lot of you should be really happy. Because, and I will say this, everybody got on us last week because Alabama obviously did not blow the doors off of Texas like a lot of people thought. And people were like, oh, you guys suck. You guys never called. Everybody on the Orangebloods staff had Texas covering. Texas covered. Hopefully you guys won some money. Eric gave us $100 super chat earlier because he's in Vegas and apparently did well at the sports book betting on the Longhorns to cover.
I told him to bet on Texas to cover.
And he did.
I told him
he
do that.
Responded with $100 super chat donation. So we got Tom in the super chat saying Stuart Mandel picks Texas to lose next week. Maybe. Serious gritty game. Both lines had issues tonight. Reason for concern. That's a good question, Tom. And Anwar, I'll throw that to you because early in the game, like in the Orangebloods Slack channel, the performance of the lines as the score was 17-7 was one of the things that was being talked about. Over the course of 4 quarters, it feels a little bit different. Any reasons for concern?
Obviously, there's a reason for concern as you continue to go into conference play, but the level of concern is where you have to kind of where I'm at. So sure, there was little things, there was little weaknesses, but you also got to think to yourself that that Jeff Traylor and that whole crew, they have been game planning this thing probably all off season. I mean, they have been looking forward to this. And so this was their Super Bowl for, all intents and purpose. And we saw they threw everything at them. Like, I'll give Jeff Traylor credit. I mean, whatever's in that playbook, there can't be many things left. I mean, I feel like he tried everything. He had a tight end take a snap. He did an onside kick. There was a the reverse and was the running back throwing to the receiver. I mean, whatever there was in their arsenal, they threw at Texas. And so, so I'm not going to go like overreact, right? Because this is what you expect from a UTSA. That's a good team that was just giving it everything that they had and had Texas as close as they could probably get them. But I won't go in the concerns that I had about the lines last year. In this year, two totally different. Like last year, I looked and I'm like, this is dysfunctional. This can't work. They can't do it. This year, I look at it and I go, okay, maybe you had some bad snaps, maybe you had some bad moments, but it'll get okay. But I've liked to have seen a little bit more defensive line pressure against the offensive line that really was ailing at that point. Sure. But by the way, I do have a question before we get off. So just make sure before I do have a dying question for you.
On air or off?
On air.
Okay.
So just please don't let me forget it. But would I like to have seen some more pressure throughout the game, the same way we saw against Alabama? Like, absolutely. Like, I would have loved to have seen that. But the thing is, Catch, we know this team at least has the ability to do it. And so because they have this team has the ability to do it, I'm not as concerned. And then definitely, you much rather nitpick something after a win than after a loss.
Yeah. And this game kind of reminded me of the movie The Great White Hype.
Okay.
In the final fight, the Damon Wayans character gets punched. You know, and he's got a little bit of he's got the stomach, and he's clearly not as ready for the fight.
Yes.
As what was the guy's name? Terry Conklin, I think, was the name of the fighter in that movie.
Mm-hmm. Yes, good memory.
And yes, I don't know where I pulled that memory from, but he knocks him down, and then the Damon Wayans character gets up and is like, "Okay, it's a fight," and then he dusts him off. And I think that was a little bit of what happened tonight. Like UTSA comes into the game, and they got that. They dialed up the halfback pass, dialed up the onside kick directly afterwards. They're living and dying on 4 yards in a cloud of dust, but they're not committing penalties. They're not getting off-schedule plays. They're not doing what Texas did early in the game, which was get into 3rd and long and then get yourself off the field. And then Texas goes down 17-7, and you wonder, well, what kind of game is Texas in? Texas goes on a 34-3 run. And that's the sign of a maturing, good football team. And you and I have covered enough Texas football teams to know UTSA's had a good enough quarterback in Frank Harris. Like I mentioned to Travis early on, if that guy's playing for Kansas State with Deuce Vaughn, now you really are cooking with grease.
Yes.
But because I think that guy's good enough to start for half the teams in the Big 12.
Absolutely.
You know, like he was a good football player.
He's good.
Yeah.
Good football.
Their problem is they didn't have enough good football players surrounding him, but the quarterback wasn't their issue. But, you know, Texas just responded. And it, just like the Alabama game a week ago, the way they responded wasn't lucky. They didn't get a lot of fortuitous bounces. This wasn't smoke and mirrors. Sometimes you can hit a lot of the big plays in the passing games and things like that, and it can make a game somewhat deceiving. And it did kind of look. The second half is defined by the whole game comes down to 3 plays. 2 runs by Bijan in the second half and the pick 6 by Jahdae Barron. And it's over at that point. But you know what? Yeah. I mean, if you're Texas, that means you've got a good knockout punch. That means you came out, you made the big plays, and by the end of the 3rd quarter, a game that was tied at halftime was over. Absolutely over. And you know, that's why for me, you think back to Tom G's Super Chat question. If we wanted to spend 30 minutes nitpicking this win, there's some things we could nitpick. Really, we could. But by and large, this was a total team victory. They covered the spread. They win by 3 touchdowns. They came from behind. They didn't turn the ball over. I wanted to see a mature performance tonight from a young team. But I wanted to see them come in and just deal with UTSA the way good football teams should at home, and they did. And for that, to me, there's a lot more positive than there is negative. And if you're finding yourself thinking too much about the things this team didn't do, if you're obsessing over the Hudson Card performance, because it was just okay. I mean, I'm not going to beat up on Hudson, but, you know, Hudson didn't do anything that's making anybody think that Quinn Ewers shouldn't be the starting quarterback when he's healthy. But if you're focused on those things, I think you're missing the boat, because I really think there was enough good in this that you're able to point on more what this team is doing right now. Mm-hmm. It's different than a year ago. And it's not different in a way that I don't think is sustainable. What they're doing, I have every confidence at this point that they're going to go into the Oklahoma game with 1 loss. And I don't know how that game goes. Oklahoma looks really good right now. That game feels like it's going to be massive when it's played, that Oklahoma's going to be a top 5 team, I think, when that game rolls around. And Texas, maybe in the top 15 by that time. Like, all they got to do is win their next 2 games and have some teams lose. And there they are. They've moved up enough that suddenly like 5 versus 15. It's a massive game. And here we go in terms of what this season can become, what's on the line from week to week. It's got a chance to be a lot of fun. And I was nervous when this season started that by the time we got to Oklahoma, maybe we wouldn't be looking at it that same way. I think Sarkisian's going to be really proud of the way his team performed tonight.
Yeah, let me do this. I'm going to respond to that. I'm going to ask my question. I'm going to try to get home by 1 o'clock so I don't have to pay extra for the sitter. So,
fair enough.
Okay. So, all right. I 100% agree with everything you just said. I think that you could see it trending in the right direction. Like you said, there's things you can nitpick, but we're nitpicking wins. We're nitpicking close loss against Alabama, but we're not nitpicking getting your ass handed to you by Arkansas and then going into conference play. So I think those things look good. To your point, though, Catch, I mean, OU does look good. And, now look, Nebraska looks bad too. So 2 things could be true. But that OU still looks good. It kind of looks like what we talked about prior to the season, which is, and I think you brought this point up and that it kind of stayed with me, is that OU is not really known for making bad hires at the football position. So they seem to be rolling. They seem to be doing pretty good. It's like you said, OU will probably be undefeated. And so Texas will definitely, need to continue on this pace, get Quinn healthy, and then to be able to go ahead and do what every Longhorn fan wants them to do within that game. But right now, again, we'll read Alex's deep dig this week, and again, we'll pick apart some of the little things that went wrong. But there's a lot more that went right. Where like we said, you cover the spread. 41 points with a limited offense, so to yourself that if this offense has a healthy quarterback, extremely healthy quarterback, it's probably not as bad. Okay, let me get to my question before I get to my sitter. Okay.
Yes.
It's off topic for a second, but this is on topic because this is the thing that I've heard all throughout the game, and only you guys can tell me what the hell was going on with the LHN broadcast and why does everyone is at Lowell? Like, what happened? Like, I got to know what was going on because I've heard people talk about in the press box that people on Twitter are going wild about this. I saw stuff on Orangebloods. Was it anything out of the ordinary?
The biggest thing that happened was that on the 78-yard touchdown run, he called Bijan Johnson.
Well, he was mixing Roshan and Bijan at that point.
Other than that, there wasn't much. I mean, that was the big thing that people were kind of clowning on when it happened, was that he said Bijan Johnson, and then he corrects himself shortly afterwards. So in terms of like the biggest play of the game, his play-by-play wasn't great on that one play, but other than that, it wasn't that big of a deal. I thought he was fine.
Okay, all right. I just had to know where that was. Okay, cool. All right.
All right, look. Do us a
I've
solid,
had a
guys.
sitter since 4 o'clock.
Anwar's got to get to the sitter.
1 o'clock.
He's got to get a column up in like the next couple of hours. He's got to get to San Antonio for a basketball tournament. Like, with all due respect to a 41-20 win where we could just keep on talking, he's got to get home before the babysitter gets some extra cash. So, like the video, subscribe to the channel. We'll be back for the Monday Overreaction Show on Monday. We'll have all of our week-to-week treats. They'll all be there. But for myself and Anwar Richardson, thank you. Following a 41-20 win by the Longhorns over UTSA. Thanks to Adam Lowy for always being the sponsor of the postgame show. If you get hurt and someone hurts you, let Adam Lowy make you a whole bunch of money. Until next time, you guys be good to each other. Anwar, you be safe on the road. We'll see you on Monday. Later.